change here. Enjoying this so far. Obviously, it's a quick turn of the page, right? I mean, yeah, it was a great weekend. Not a whole lot of time to enjoy it. I think most time that is a little travel back, but you know, it's the same thing I've said probably over and over the last few weeks. We're continuing to get better, and I think each and every week, the last few in particular, we've seen some steps that I think we've done a really good job of taking. It was a battle. I don't know that it was as clean as we would have liked it to be honest with you, but that complimentary ball that really had to take place, it did. And you know, I think the thing that maybe I said it afterwards, when the opportunities arise, I think that's where we've been. The last few in particular have been really good at taking advantage of some of the opportunities. And this past week, I think that's really evident. You know, obviously there's a lot of really good things, but I mean opportunistic in the situations where, you know, whatever the guy does, you know, we get a fumble on the 2-yard line, 3-yard line, 4-yard line with 45 seconds going to half, and we put the thing back in. You know, there's just some opportunities, block field goals, put hands on punts, you know, that we've taken advantage of those opportunities, and I think that's a big area where we've been able to grow. Games are always going to have adversity in them. There's going to be shots on both sides. There's going to be plays made on both sides. And I think in the first few weeks, we had a tough time handling some of those things. And in that way, sometimes you don't take advantage of some of the opportunities that are out there. And the last few in particular, we've done a really good job of finding ways to take advantage of the opportunities when they arise. And the only way you can do that is by doing your job and doing it really well and execution. And that's what we keep hammering upon to our players is you know, you never know when those opportunities are going to come, but you got to be ready for them. And I thought special teams wise, there was a lot of really good things, and then there were some things we got to do a lot better. And we're going to pride ourselves on that ability the special teams wise to connect both the offense and defense and really be the link in that complimentary ball. And we put a hand on obviously a punt, we put a hand on a field goal, but we also had a field goal blocked ourselves. We had punt return yards that are not something that we're used to. But there's a lot of those areas where there's some really big plays out there, and there's some things that change a little bit more the dynamics of games when you can tackle people inside the 20-yard line if they try to return the thing, and then you have a chance to take one back out to the 40 or 50-yard line. Those are areas where the field position battle really kind of turned, and we needed that this past weekend. And I think if there's anything that we did, I think that's the one area that linked everything together.
Mark over there.
Luke, when some of your players have been asked about the improvement of the defense, they point to the defensive line and what they're seeing there, and I'm curious what strides have you seen? Where do you think, what part of the game do you think that unit is better that's helping things?
I think the ability for those guys to play multiple guys. I think that we have always had that philosophy. Always, I say the last 2 years I've had that philosophy that you got to be able to play multiple guys. But sometimes as you get into a season, when you really start to go back on it, you're really not. You know, if there's 65 snaps and some guys are playing 45 and some are playing 20, that's not really what you're talking about. So I think our ability, Coach EJ's ability, Coach Witt's ability, or Coach Mitch's ability to truly have a balance of those guys has given them an opportunity to continue to grow. And you know, you kind of do ride some of those guys that are having a hot hand. But I would say more than anything, they've answered the challenge. And I think the last few weeks, we've kind of put a challenge upon those guys up front to, to be able to set a standard and set a tone and do the things we ask them to do each and every week, because sometimes it changes. Everybody wants to talk about sacks. Everybody wants to talk about, the minus yardage plays. But the difference in ball games are when you can establish a line of scrimmage, when you can create walls, and when you can pressure quarterbacks by not running around things sometimes, and really kind of execute the game plan. And if there's one thing those guys have done in particularly really well the last 2 weeks, is be challenged to do something maybe a little bit different and then execute on Saturday.
Luke, Penn State's a team that's pretty well built from defensively, at least from front to back. Like, what is the challenge for your offensive line this week against Penn State's defensive front?
Well, it's going to be a little bit different than it was the past week, right? I mean, last week you knew where the guys were going to be. They were going to be big, they were going to be physical, they were going to be strong, they were going to be square. This week it's a little bit different in the sense that you don't know exactly where they're going to be. They're going to move all around. They've got really, really good athletes. I think obviously that's where the strength of their team is, and their ability to create some havoc and make some of those big plays up front, athletically, but also physically and speed-wise, is the challenge. And it's not as clean sometimes, like you can prepare during the week, like, okay, this is what you're gonna see. I think when you really kind of start to break those guys down, it's different to prepare for because they're gonna be in a lot of different places, they're gonna do a lot of different things, and they rely upon, their ability to create havoc, their athleticism to make some plays up front. And, we gotta play really sound, and we're gonna have to be able to match and be able to adjust by what it is that they're doing, obviously as you get into the game.
Just regarding that offensive line, what's the difference you've seen in them these last to return this winning streak? Where's the main area where they kind of progressed?
I can't sit here and say that, like, I know it's easier for guys to say, well, there's gotta be a reason why you're winning, and there's gotta be a reason why you're running the football better, and I can honestly say, I just think the guys are continuing to play better together. I think that, each and every week, they're well prepared, but it comes down to the execution of things on Saturday, and as things happen better, obviously confidence builds, and I think you play faster, but if there's one thing this past week, as you really look at it, I think there's only 2 runs. If you take Tywee's runs, 126 yards, there's only 2 runs where I would say there's not somebody sitting there of some sorts, an unblocked hat. It's not some version of a train wreck somewhere. I think there was a 3rd down run, it was 3rd and 4, and I think he went for 24, 25 yards, got tripped up. And there's one run late where I think he cuts off the backside edge and maybe he gets tackled by the legs. Otherwise, every other run was some type of physical, somebody coming down from the second level, somebody coming over from the other, in some ways an unblocked hat. So I know you asked about the offensive line, but I think that's a part of it, right? Is when you can't every single time block every guy, you got to have confidence that you can still run the football. And that's where I think we've grown. I think that's where we've kind of allowed the offensive line to play a little bit more aggressive and grow as well. And then count on, that guy that's carrying the football to say sometimes, we might not be able to block that guy that's coming down from 7-8 yards, and we're going to take our chances. And when you do that, I think it gives guys opportunities that they don't have to be perfect. And I think twofold, the offensive line has done a better job. They're working together. But I also think that as a whole, we've done a better job to say, look, yes, they might do this, they might spin, but let's block the things that we see. And for somebody that's an unblocked hat, maybe he's coming across, maybe he's coming from depth, and we're just going to give Tywee or Darren Dupree or Dylan Jones or Cade Young, we're going to give them an opportunity to get started downhill and then see what they can do. And I think all of us can gain a little bit more confidence and ability to do that.
Luke, looking at the travel rosters of the 3 road games, there's been double-digit first-year freshmen that have been on those travel rosters. Is that number larger, or I'm impressed? Is it bigger than when you had even at Cincinnati?
I don't study the travel roster maybe like you guys. Actually, it's funny because pregame meals we eat by class, so seniors, juniors. And it gets a little mixed up because everybody that's in their second year wants to eat a little bit earlier. So when you call sophomores, they all get up to eat. But you do start to look at, when you say freshmen, how many guys truly get up, and usually it's only the first year guys. So I don't read the I don't study the roster, but pregame meal, it's always nice to kind of start to look to see how many true freshmen you have traveling and how many of those guys are have an opportunity to make an impact.
What actually goes into that travel roster in terms of with those freshmen?
There's no handouts. Let's just be honest. You have to have a role. You have to be in a position, in a place where, hey, this is something that we're going to do. I would rather look. There's a 76 limit on the roster, and if we took 72, I'd be fine. If that's what deserved to go. If we could, I was in a different league and we didn't have a travel limit. That didn't mean we took everybody, but anybody that was deserved and earned an opportunity and could play in the game, and we would take. Sometimes when they put limits on it, it might hold you back, but it doesn't change. I mean, every one of those guys, I think if you looked at it, maybe, who was one that was on last week that had been Big Mel, I mean, maybe a Chicago kid, but it wasn't like we were just gonna take him because he's from Chicago.
Stack was one of the guys that traveled last year.
Yeah, we had an issue with the tight end position but we wouldn't have taken either one of those 2 guys if we didn't feel like they had some really good weeks put back to back to back, that we'd have confidence to be able to put them in a football game.
Coach, earlier in the season,
You know, you guys got the 2 top 15 opponents. Obviously, it didn't go the way you want. When it comes to a game like this, especially it being at home, do you think the guys are maybe hungrier to try and unseat one of those top teams and prove yourself at a higher rate?
No, I don't, I hope our guys don't look at what somebody is ranked and things like that. Obviously, I know that there's things that people have talked to them about, but it's just another great opportunity for us. You know, we knew in this league, this is what we signed up for. And week in and week out, it's gonna continue to be those situations. And if we start to look at it differently, look, it's a night game, it's later in the day, we're gonna create an environment that's gonna be really exciting and fun. And I think that's what we need to look at, not, hey, what are these guys ranked, what do people think, and things like that. Try to, you know, put all those things behind us and just recognize, look, this is a big game because we've had an opportunity to make it a big game. And the way that our guys have played the last few weeks make it a bigger game. Nothing else matters. You know, we talked about it last week of payback, redemption, and the way we played last year. And you talk about those things, but like I say, once that ball's kicked off, none of that matters. You know, and so people will talk about it this week in some light, but once that ball's kicked off, none of that matters. And we got to continue to focus on the things that matter.
Jim, you left.
Luke, how much do you buy into home field advantage? And as you build this thing, how important is it to you to kind of establish this place as a fun place
Home
to play?
field advantage is what you make of it. And I think that this place has been a home field advantage, you know, obviously over time. But you got to make it a home field advantage. I think that's one of those things that Coach Alvarez, you know, he came a little bit and visited the last time early in the season, you kept talking about the environment and making this place a home field advantage, but you have to, you have to make it the home field advantage. You have to create some of those things. You have to generate the energy. And that's what our guys got to understand, right? It doesn't just happen because they make the game at 6:30, because they make, you know, whatever the rankings and matchup is, that doesn't make it, you know, doesn't give us an opportunity to have a home field advantage unless we make it a home field advantage. So I think we put a lot of that upon ourselves to say, hey, this is something that falls on our shoulders too. If we don't go out there and start fast and do the things we've done the last few weeks, then it doesn't become a home field advantage. So we got to pride ourselves in making it and creating it as well. Otherwise, you just assume that the students got to get there earlier, right? But hey, students got to get there, like, well, you know, give us a reason to get there a hell of a lot earlier, and that's what we got to do.
Luke, with Sebastian Cheeks, obviously helped on that safety this past weekend, but just with him and starting off as an inside linebacker, going to outside linebacker, just what were discussions like with him during that time with the transition? Just how have you seen him progress since?
I don't know that there was a ton of discussion. We always, when you try to move guys around, you always do want to get opinion, but most of these kids want to play, and if they want to play, sometimes you got to get them in the place that gives them the best opportunity. So obviously, what we talked about, we made a transition with him, I think 2 weeks into camp or something, I think maybe after Thomas Heiberger got hurt. And it didn't take long for us to realize and believe that this is his best position. I didn't say that maybe he always felt like that or feels like that, but I've definitely seen him over the last 4 or 5 weeks kind of grow and, you know, and understand the position more and become, you know, a more of an asset for us. And I think he's going to continue to do that. Obviously, he's, you know, not played as many reps maybe as he might hope at times, but I think that's the thing we keep talking about the guys up front. We have the ability to kind of roll a lot of guys. And right now, there's 5 guys at least playing up there on those outside linebacker spots, and maybe even 6 with Thomas Heiberger get back into the mix. And all of them have a little bit of a different, you know, strength and ability, and we're just trying to find ways to continue to use those guys in the best ways possible. But he's a guy that definitely he showed up in some of these games. He's produced some, you know, whether it's sacks or havoc plays or tackles for loss. He is a guy that's going to be a difference. I didn't say a difference maker, but he could be a difference maker because he is different than the rest of those guys on the edge, and he's only scratching the surface.
Colton.
We saw Tretch and Will play the most snaps together through the season on Saturday. I know obviously there's some injuries at the wide receiver spot that probably create some of those opportunities, but what are some of the challenges or maybe difficulties of getting both those guys out there at the same time that you found in the first?
Well, that's to me, that's why it's important that, you know, in your first year, 2 years in a system, that you call it a system, and guys learn it as a system so that there's interchangeable parts. We know that both of those guys might fit a little bit better in slots, but the ability to get your best players on the field, it has to be taught systematically. And I think that's where you're seeing the growth of, you know, the things that we've done from year 1 to year 2 is guys understand the system better. And when they understand the system better, they can be plugged into different spots. And when you can be plugged into different spots, just like offense and defense, you can get your best 11 guys on the field. And that's a process that, it takes time sometimes, and it takes, want-to by the guys as well, to challenge themselves to do that. So we've had a better opportunity, better chance to do that. And then obviously injuries have put us in some of those situations to have to do it a little bit more. But that's where I think we got to continue to grow, figuring out how do we get the best 11 guys out there. And sometimes the best 11 is 4 wides, sometimes it's 2 wides. But either way, it's a lot of times with both those 2 guys on the field.
Real high, right?
Luke, I believe Mabry got in there at the end of the game. I just want to ask, what's the value maybe in getting him those few snaps at the end of the game? And do you ever kind of think about the red shirt aspect of it as well?
Yeah, I don't know what the value in that situation probably as we look back at it. I mean, here's a guy that we know has to be ready, and every opportunity to step on a field on a Saturday, regardless of what the situation, he's got to be ready. And that's where one of those situations that you don't think it's a big deal until it's a big deal. And what I mean is the guy's still 1 play away, not from just going in there and finishing a game, but from going in there and having to win a game, going in there and have to control a game, going in there and have to make adjustments and adapt within a game. So every opportunity to get him on the field, I think, is a great opportunity for us.
Over here. Steve?
Walker had over 20 carries each of the last 2 weeks. I think he only approached that level like twice at his former school. What did y'all see in him that made y'all realize he was ready for that workload and could drive the way he has?
Well, I don't, like you said, since you hadn't seen him carry the ball over 20 times, but all you got to do is meet him and spend a little bit of time with him, and you would assume that if given the opportunity to carry the ball over 20 times, you don't think it would be something out of his character or nature. And it has been great to see him be able to do that, because I've been around some pretty dynamic backs, and as you get into the season, you kind of recognize and assess where they're best. And we had a back that was a pretty good draft pick that, as we got into the season, we didn't know he was a transfer guy as well, and we didn't recognize that he probably was best with no more than 18 to 20 carries. And as we got into the season, I think we're starting to recognize that Tyree in particular is a guy that's much better with more than 18 to 20 carries. And you might have assumed that as he walked in the door, just being an older guy, being mature, being physical, being strong. But a lot has to do mentally with a lot of the way you go about the game. And so it's been impressive to see him as he's continued to grow and show us how he can handle things and how he gets better with the more carries that he has.
Mark, go ahead.
I know at this time of week it's dicey asking about how guys are in injuries and stuff, but as far as Bryson goes, is there any level of optimism?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, we were hoping that this would be the week he would be able to make it back. He's a tough guy. I mean, like he would have been out there last week had you let him probably, and I don't know what he could have done or even protect himself. But he's a guy that's going to give it everything he's got, and it'll be more of a game time situation. I don't know how much he'll be able to do during the week. Right? This is only Monday, but I still don't know how much we would think he's going to be able to do on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. But again, I don't ever count him out. You count him out, he'll surprise you. So we'll have a better idea later in the week, but I would say he's limited right now, and then it's going to come down to weighing how well can he play, how well can he protect himself, and what are the advantages if he is in there.
Back here, Phil.
From the outside looking in, it seems like it was a very well-rounded, complete game in all 3 phases. Would you grade Saturday's game as the most complete, well-rounded game of the year?
No, I wouldn't. I think that there was a lot of opportunities we left out there. I think the first half is still one of those situations. And again, we talk about it. Sometimes you got to have a plan going in the game, and we knew it was going to be a little bit more of a physical game. We knew that and believed that it was going to have to be one of those things where we're going to have to wear people down, in particular last week, wear them down up front, even in the back end, because they were going to make it very difficult to run the football. They were going to make it very difficult to create bigger plays. So I say complete. I'd like to have seen, be able to do some of that earlier in the first half. But I do think it was more of the complete game of adding the special teams, having some negative things happen to us, still be able to handle those things, and then, you know, the second half of the game really kind of taking over. But I think as a whole, you know, the first half of things, I'd like to see us be able to control the line of scrimmage. I think I'd like to see us create some bigger plays early on, but that's also getting a little bit selfish. That's also getting a little bit greedy. You know, but that's, hey, as you start to play better, those are the things that I think continue to drive you.
Last two, Colton and Jake.
So Luke, with seeing the Wisconsin football equipment Twitter account talk about how they unloaded, you know, after they got back from Evanston, I think it was like an hour and a half total from unloading the truck and putting stuff in the laundry, but just, I guess with, just overall with like what these equipment managers do and just prepping for games and getting things ready in the locker room, just, especially your time here, what have you seen from them and just what they do for this program?
This is a huge business that a lot of people don't see a lot of the things that go on. And Jeremy and that crew, like I said, since the day I walked in the door, have been incredibly impressed. The last few years, it's been one of those, you know, kind of areas where you said, like, okay, this, I don't know, this area isn't something that grows, and it's kind of becoming unique. And with what, you know, like I said, when you look at every area in college football, every area within your program, whether it's from the technology sides of things, the video sides of things, and then people forget about this equipment side of things that just have to be there every single day, day in and day out, and it's not an area that maybe gets as much growth and opportunity as a lot of the other areas. And but I don't know that there's a place that can move forward without it, right? I mean, like, the health and wellness of your guys, that's not just in the training room, that's just being able to be taken care of with everything they do. So those guys do a phenomenal job. Saturdays are not easy for them either. You know, 11 o'clock kick for us means probably about a 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. start for them as well. Not to mention that we're loading up and headed back home and try to relax a little bit, and those guys are still at work. So it's a thankless job, but those guys do a great job.
Last one.
Luke, is there any concern with the performance of Nathaniel in the last few weeks? It's 2 of 5 in the last month.
Yeah, I don't think he's had as many opportunities, and I think that's a good thing. That's why I keep trying to remind him, is you got to have your patience, man. If, you know, when things aren't going as well and we're having to kick a lot of field goals, that's not always a good thing either. But I think that's where, you know, it can get a little bit frustrating, and I think those opportunities becoming fewer and far between make it even harder on those guys, you know, and when they're in a rhythm, when they're kicking 2 or 3 field goals a game and having more opportunities, yes, they do feel better about what it is they're doing, and then knowing that your opportunities are limited when you go in there, he's got to be able to handle that. And hopefully the better we get, the less we need him, but when we need him, it's really important and really big. And we got the utmost confidence in him. Again, he's, you know, got to get himself back into a rhythm, but it's more about just understanding that, you know, hey, it's a good thing when you don't get as many opportunities, but we trust you, we believe in you.
Coach, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.